Welcome to the CT Educator podcast. I am your host, Karina Hogan. I am a registered CT technologist with 20 years of experience and knowledge. I help new CT technologists level up their CT training so that you can become a successful technologist. I'm also a mom and committed to sharing my knowledge and expertise to help you build your confidence, know the CT basics so that you can deliver quality patient care. So let's get into it. Hello. Welcome back, wonderful technologists. Welcome back to the last episode of the CT Educator podcast for 2024. This is the last episode for this year. I have to say that I want to express some gratitude, and I am just grateful for all the good things this podcast has brought this year. I have to say, reflecting, because I've done a lot of reflection in the last week, I have to say I was very, very nervous with starting this podcast because I know there was other podcasts that existed out there, and I just was very terrified. But like with anything in life, we have to do it scared. And so I ripped off the Band-Aid. I did it. And I remember, posting my first episode. It was not the greatest episode anyway, because, when you start out on something, it's not great, but you just perfect the craft as you go along and you gain more experience. So I have to say, up to date, we are 57 episodes in to the CT Educator podcast, which I can say for 2025, it's probably going to be past 100 because I am bringing you more episodes and more content for 2025. So first of all, I want to thank some people because I have made some awesome networking connections and friendships out of people and just awesome connections. So first off, gotta say thank you to the guys on the Catheter Jockeys podcast. If you haven't heard them, make sure you check them out, okay? These guys are awesome, and I am super excited to have them join me on this podcast for 2025. I will be reaching out to you guys because I am going to do a lot more collaborations with other people in the radiology community, and I'm super excited about that. I wanted to do it for 2024, but life just handed me some really, really just devastating things and family deaths and things with my children that I kind of had to put a pause on certain things. So, but thank you to them. They are really encouraging and just help me just to, uplift me and motivate me to just continue doing this podcast. So thank you, Catheter Jockeys. You guys are freaking awesome. The second, group of folks that I want to thank is the folks on Collaboration RA, which Marceline and Reese. If you haven't checked them out, make sure you guys check them out. They are awesome. They do a lot of advocacy work and they do a lot of speaking engagements and things like that. So you guys are freaking amazing. I love to listen to their podcasts and their episodes on advocacy because advocacy is very important when it comes to the radiology community. So thank you, Marceline and Reese, for that awesome podcast. I hope to have you guys on my podcast in 2025. Also, make sure you guys stay tuned, to all the radiology podcasts that are out there because there's more than one. There's a couple of Rad Tech podcasts, which is by Chandria. She is awesome. I absolutely love her content. She goes in as far as how to become a radiologic technologist. She breaks things down and she gives you a lot of steps and a lot of ways to find jobs as a radiologic technologist. She has a ton of experience just like I do. And I can't wait to collaborate with her. So all the people that I'm willing to collaborate with in 2025, I just got to reach out to all these people. No, it's okay, because I will. And also, if you aren't following along, you got to follow her on Instagram and TikTok. It's Prof B, so at OK She Rad. So make sure you follow her as well. She drops a lot of awesome content when it comes to radiology and being a radiologic technologist. She has this series on ICD codes. I'm telling you, it's the best thing you will ever watch. She is so freaking funny. So I hope to have Prof B on my show as well. And these are some of the people that are very influential in the radiology community. Also, there's a couple of other people that I do want to bring onto the podcast. The MRI Man, if you haven't followed him, I follow him on Instagram. Tell you his content is awesome, and I would love to bring him onto my show. There is also, I am not sure who is behind this page, but they bring some awesome content when it comes to all radiology modalities. It's the radiographer. I'm not sure who runs that Instagram page because it's a faceless page. I have never seen the person who runs the page so far. Maybe I'll have to go back and dive into their content. I would love to have them on my show. So whoever's behind the radiographer page, please send me a DM on Instagram because I would love to bring you onto the show. Okay. So, good things. So there are going to be a lot of collaborations that I have in store. So those are some of the people that are very influential in our radiology community. I know there's more. So those are the top ones that I am excited to collaborate with. We'll be reaching out to and hope to have every single one of them on the show. So for this episode for this week and to end 2024, I'm going to give you the top most listened to episodes of 2024. So I did my Spotify Wrapped, and it gave me the top episodes that you guys have not only streamed, listened to the most, and just, dived into the content. So I'm going to give you short clips of 9 episodes that were the top episodes for 2024. So it ranges from patient centering, IV access, CT training being adequate, CT trauma stories, CT scan stories, and different topics that I've had on the podcast. So I've broken them down, given you short clips. If you happen to see the video clips of this, I am gathering together all the video clips that I will put on Instagram, and that will be on the YouTube channel starting in January. Okay. So hope you enjoy all the top 10 most listened to episodes, and hope you guys have a safe Christmas and a really safe New Year. Stay warm out there if you live in somewhere that it's cold like I do. So super excited for all the good things that are coming for 2025. As always, we all just have to be grateful that we made it through the year and grateful for what we have and continue to be great. So hope you guys have an awesome, awesome holiday, and I will see you next year in January. Okay. So couple things. Why is patient centering important? Well, the importance of it is that we have dose modulation systems on every CT scanner out there in the country. So the purpose of that is that when we scout the patient, that the correct amount of CT dose is administered to get an optimal exam. You have to make sure that you are centering and lining up your patient to that correct Z axis. Because as CT technologists, we always make sure that we level and center and isocenter to that Z axis, to the body of the patient. So that when you take your 90 degree and 0 degree scout, so if you do 2 scouts, some facilities only do 1, that you make sure that your patient is centered correctly and the system is calculating and optimizing, okay, the patient's correctly centered. Is your CT training really adequate? And really be honest with yourself, because we have to be honest with ourselves when it comes to that. The second thing that I really want you to take away and ask yourself is, how can I make my training, my experience, and my education better? And how can I start doing that today? So those are two big questions that I want you to ask yourself so that you can get a good perspective on how you are going to become the best technologist you can. And I guarantee you, you will be very, very successful. And I know we have CT students that do come through our facility at our hospital, and I just don't see that part. So I've taken my experience because I do not gatekeep anything. I always love to share knowledge, and I always will continue to share knowledge, that this is the area where we need to dial in and help these technologists succeed. Like, give them the basics, give them the education, give them, workshops, trainings, whatever the case is. So I have taken the time to start creating some of that material so that it will help the newer technologists that are coming into play, and even the older technologists that need that refresher or feel like they didn't get enough training and education when they started out. Now, you also have your power ports, which power ports, we all know that they either are circular and have CT in the middle, or they're triangular with 3 dots. And how you can verify that is by looking at the chest x-ray. Sometimes you could look at the CT scout and you'll see it, but usually we'll verify it on a chest x-ray before we even inject any contrast on the patient. And then there is a line that goes in that the nurses access, and then we can go ahead and power inject 5 cc's per second at 300 PSI. Okay. When it comes to a Cordis or a Hickman, those are sheaths. Those are what are used to get venous access into the patient because they have to slam a bunch of fluids, they have to slam a bunch of drugs, and they have to get things into the patient to keep them alive, basically. Okay. So you see a lot of cardiac patients that have Cordises, they have Hickmans, they have a Swans. Those are things that you cannot power inject through. One of the things that is a huge pet peeve for us in CT is when we tell you we need an 18 or a 20 in the AC because we're doing a PE study, we're doing a CTA head and neck, we're doing a runoff, we're doing cardiacs, we're doing something that requires an arterial injection. And so we have to catch those arteries in a very small window. And my biggest pet peeve is when I ask the nurse to please put in this gauge because we're doing this type of test, sends the patient to CT, and they have a 20 gauge in their wrist. Big no-no. I can tell you that just irritates not only myself, but it irritates any technologist out there. Our department is way too fucking complex that you need to write things down, whether it's a protocol, whether it's, a certain exam where you need to know start and end, how many window levels you need to do, how much contrast, how many scans you're going to acquire. So those are the things that you need to make sure that you do, because it is super important to write things down so you can remember. And then once you start to become more experienced, then you'll just remember things. But I'm telling you, having a notebook, writing things down is super duper important. So I want to start out by kind of going through when you're new, you're starting out CT, you've probably never looked at a CT image ever in your life, and you are like, holy crap. Like, how do I look at these images? What am I looking at? What do I do? How do I set up this exam? So us as the seasoned senior technologists really need to take these new technologists under our belt and just really give them the tools and the resources so they can become good technologists. And he had fractures everywhere. So he spent probably a few months in the trauma ICU that we have. The nurse proceeds to tell me, well, he hit the pavement first. And of course, and it took the skin off of his face and pushed it all the way to his forehead. I was like, you have to be freaking kidding me. No. So we had to turn on the lights because we had to restart IVs and he was like crashing so many times. And so when I took a good look at him, like you could start to see the layers of skin and like bone and everything. And it was like, holy shit. Like he really just scraped all the, his entire face, all the skin of his face, and it's all the way up to his forehead. Like, I kid you not. It was the most interesting case because I think it was maybe several days later. He comes back down, wired shut jaw, and they had reconstructed and fixed his face. So we had to rescan him, of course, just to make sure. And he has, he had all these plates and screws and everything on this scan. And it took him a good while, I think up to a good year. Like they sent him to a rehab as soon as he was, recovered. I shit you not. We inserted probably about 3 chest tubes and 9 drains into this patient. Like every time we would rescan her, it would be another drain we were placing. We placed 9 drains into this patient. That is probably more than I've seen in my entire career. Okay. Now, there is another story that I'll probably do on the segment about, the interesting story about a pericardial drain that we did in CT. But that will be another story for another episode. So make sure you stay tuned for that. However, 9 drains, 3 chest tubes, because she just developed so much fluid and so many empyemas in her chest that's where we wanted to go. And the surgeon refused to take her back to surgery to get her cleaned out so she can be on the road to recovery and get out of the hospital. Needless to say, she was in the ICU for a very long time. And when she said that, I immediately, like the tears were rolling down my face, and I immediately hugged this patient. Her husband hugged me and said, "Thank you for saving my wife. You guys did an amazing job. Thank you for saving my wife and giving her back to me." So it is one of those stories that I will forever remember. And it is emotional for me to tell it because it's one of those stories that if there could have been some proper care with the surgeon, this lady's outcome would have been a lot better and she wouldn't have gotten as sick as she did. And it's one of those CT scan stories that I remember, and I actually tell some of my students and some of the new techs that I do train that it's one of those things that makes you think. The patients don't remember, they remember how you make them feel. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you would like to share your CT experience, have an interesting story to share, or need help in your CT training, please email me your questions at contact@thecteducator.com. Follow along on Instagram at the CT Educator, also on Facebook at the CT Educator. Don't forget to like, share, leave a 5-star review, as this will help support the show and it'll reach all of you that need guidance. Thank you for listening and happy scanning.